Sir, excuse me, sir. Boop. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm just hanging out, having a good time. Nothing could ever happen to ruin this cool day of awesome sauce.
Hey, you, right there.
Oh, my bodacious, bootylicious brother.
Don't call me that. Listen, have you seen this dog woman with green eyes and a white, like literally white man covered in scars?
Oh, I think I've been seeing the doggy girl. She's boobs.
Where and when? The both of them are wanted for violating the cosmic guidelines set by the Court of Angels. It's been 2 months since they were last seen. Until now, who knows how many dimensions and universes they've tampered with. Their powers are strong enough to wipe out planets.
Ha ha, hey, has the storyline been done in like every other cover? Just get over there.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I see the stuff. I've been watching them and keeping up with all the hit memes like the sheesh and the mangas, and I've been watching them and I'm just like, man, these guys are pretty good at the podcast, and I wouldn't mind posting bail, at least for a week or two of man or woman on fun, bun, non-binary furry play. I got the stash to back it up. I mean...
So, how long do you think we're gonna last here?
I mean, it should be enough that we can connect all the universes together without getting caught.
And if anything happens before then?
I have not thought of that yet, and I was hoping you had an idea.
I don't know, you seem like the confident one here if you think all of that can be done quickly.
Is that supposed to be some kind of negative connotation?
What? I'm just saying you're being overly optimistic. If Jesus comes to kick our ass, I'm making it clear I am not gonna have enough juice to seduce him.
What? Okay, anyway, that's not gonna matter. Everything is gonna fall into place, and we're gonna restore the cosmic plane to how it was supposed to be.
And the material? I'm still weak, you know.
Listen, I'm the captain now, and I'm not gonna be sitting here
Plop.
Oh, the puzzle of the piece of the puzzle. See, you're fine. You can stop whining now.
Does this mean?
Yes, you get to be a co-op.
Yeah!
Hello, SCC. It's Jade here.
And Jason, motherfuckers, with some very nice and good things to say.
Totally. So, we got a goodie today. We're covering Pokesonic legend, aka Poke, who is doing a video on the Efferomentator, aka Efferom.
The root of all of this being Lavender Town, who we will just call Lavender, with a video about how to make, good characters, I guess?
Yeah, that's mostly right. Maybe. This whole commentary chain is discussing tips and suggestions regarding writing and designing characters.
Wait, that's literally it?
What'd you expect?
I don't know. Longer chain? More derailment than a train piloted by a Tumblr user? Higher stakes?
What era of this business are you from?
2019.
Okay, that tracks. On to the video.
He's an angel, like a food cake. Got a halo and I'm looking like a double take.
Well, that was a nice nap. Where am I?
Because you posted your memes in the general chat, you sadist. Gil, hypo.
Oh, you do realize that all three of us are kind of stuck in the chess dimension now, right? Can we please stop? Please, I just...
Hypo, you got anything to say? Okay, we can leave, but only on the condition that I can trap them in here.
Freedom!
Sup, bitch.
Okay, listen, get out!
Nah, for destroying Poke's room.
Oh, you better not continue trying to destroy my room!
I love democracy. I learned that by experience. You know, spoons had more than I thought. I am now dust.
No way, right?
Jason, I can't.
No fucking way.
Jason, I can't open this jar of mild banana peppers. Please help me.
Huh? Okay, right, never on the same page. Anyways, what am I supposed to get from this, recap sequence? Because the only comprehensible thing was that you're trapped in a place and now you're no longer trapped in the place. This was so not fucking needed. Also, that glitchy film effect is not great on the eyes when it flickers.
Oh, and I really can't let this slide. For something as important as a disclaimer, it is probably better to use a clearer font because this is just a lot on the eyes.
You and your goddamn fonts. I'm just saying, let's, as a community, start using flashing imagery warnings, please. Please don't continue.
Jason, come on. At least give him a chance. Let him cook.
I can't think of anything to draw. This blows.
Did you really decide to draw already? It's only been like a few days since you made me this.
Yes, because it usually helps me forget that you are now all over my room as dust.
I am everywhere. Inside your world, inside your PC, on your monitor.
Yo, I'm about to smoke up the dust like a blunt.
Who let you in here?
I'm basically among us.
Ever since I got out of the chest dimension and somehow turned Hound King into Dustin Spoon, he's been nothing but an aggravating nuisance. I can't even focus on getting anything done, and that's already hard enough for me.
On your fireplace, all over your figurine collection, all over that shit you think you call a black butler.
Yes, I get it. You're an annoying jerk. I figured that out after you called me a female dog and destroyed my room.
Bitch!
They swore in commentaries?
I haven't even gotten it fixed yet. Just in a state where I can at least live in it again. Think. How am I supposed to get rid of Hound King and fix my room without any material on hand?
If only you hadn't thrown that spoon, I'd have destroyed the city by now.
Do you think that makes anything better? God, I'm so sick and tired of dealing with you as dust. If I were able to, I'd have you taken care of right here and now.
May I suggest a broom? Or perhaps a vacuum?
Nuh-uh, Jade. She's not the Black Butler.
Judging by the context, I'm pretty sure that was meant to be an insult towards me.
Who are you? And why shouldn't I just kill you, are you?
Oh, it's Pokesonic, but you can just call me Pokey. And as for why you shouldn't kill me, I have a proposition for you.
Pokesonic. That is certainly no name for a human. I suppose I can have time to be the judge of that myself, however. Wait, did you just say you had a proposition? Well, I suppose I shall hear you out then.
You helped me off my dust problem and generously by my side, and I will let you keep that down in my place. It might have to be an upper limit, and or so, though, I really don't want to be overwhelmed by them while I'm trying to do art and whatnot.
That sounds quite excellent.
Oh, I get it now. He's the Black Butler.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's pretty... Hey, he's not black.
I think butlers are a group of people we should start demonizing.
Holy shit, is that Marty?
The person who I would ship in My Hero Academia would have to be Deku. Oh, Deku!
Now here's a fun fact about me. I often dabble in character design and writing myself, so saying I'd have some thoughts would be a bit of an understatement. With all that being said...
Lady Poke, it appears Ephraim does not link the video he's covering within the description.
Oh, right. See, while it isn't necessarily a requirement to link the video being covered in the description, it generally prefers that way viewers can have easier time checking to make sure the arguments present are sound and that the commentator isn't doing anything fishy. Spoilers, Ephraim does, but we'll get to that later. Now, without any further interruptions, let us start the show.
Is that going to stick by the next...
Okay, I have an interruption. I feel like this wasn't super necessary to include in your already insanely long intro. I'm going to be so for real with you. This was really hard to sit through 7 minutes of stuff that could have been boiled down a bit more and made more entertaining. This, quite frankly, inconsequential point was just salt in the wound.
Oh, yeah. Also keep in mind how she just straight up says Ephraim does fishy shit before anything even happens. Plus, the thing she says in the very first interjection coming up.
Why would we care about that?
Oh, you'll see.
Before I continue, I should note that I am not an artist, nor am I an OC maker. I'm just basing my critiques off of common sense and what I understand about concepts like story structure, as well as what an audience member would typically pick up on.
Alright. Let's play a little game of keep this in mind for later, because the statement ultimately isn't the most accurate descriptor for how Ephraim argues in this commentary. And while I'm not going to sit here and say non-artists so people who don't create OCs can't discuss topics such as character design, it doesn't exactly bode well for him to admit out of the gate that he isn't the most knowledgeable on the subject matter.
Now, theoretically speaking, he could do his own research on the topic to have a better understanding going in. But as we'll see in a short while, the likelihood of him having done that is rather questionable, to put it simply.
That's your first interjection?
You know what? Prank him, Jason.
Aha, you already know. Alright, so I could tolerate the recap intro, the long storyline intro, and even the context having its own lampshade moment at the end. But this is testing my patience, of which I don't have much of. Because all of this on its own would be perfectly fine. Once again, not bothered by people having long intros to have your fun. But your first interjection is as fluffy as a husky in winter.
Haha, me when I'm a dog.
Shut up, furry. I'm more so bugged by you basically saying Ephraim having not much experience is a bad omen. Straight up, who cares? You make it sound like it's bad that he even brought it up. You even buffer it with saying that even without experience, he's allowed to talk about it. I'm ultimately quite befuddled.
Oh, that's not even the best part, Jason. The follow-up by Sebastian is not much better. He just makes an assumption that Ephraim did no research and, like, I guess? Level with me, Poke. What does this segment do ultimately? Because what I'm seeing here is you two just being like, oh, Ephraim's gonna bomb this so hard, guys. I got a bad feeling about this, Scoob. So I'm gonna leave you with this. If you don't want to let something play out, you can keep that clip and bring it up when it's relevant.
Now, the more astute among you might notice that this thumbnail includes warnings that your OC may be both too boring and too much. Too much of what? I'm not entirely sure, but that's another topic. However, the concept of an OC that's too much isn't actually really mentioned at any point in the video. It's all advice for how to not make your character boring, but not on how to stop yourself from creating too much. The closest we get is a warning that if you put too many scars on a character, it will cause said scars to take over the character's story, and possibly cause people to constantly say hello to my little friend anytime they come across that character. Okay, I made up the second one.
If they're covered in scars, that's going to take over their story.
Lavender Town jump scare.
Okay, but in all seriousness, I'm gonna stick a pin on the clip used because what I have to say is gonna be more relevant later on. Yes, I know, I also asked you a different thing Ephraim brings up in mind for later in the last interjection, but both these things are gonna lead into some of my biggest problems with this commentary.
Poke, please be patient with me. I can only fit so many things in my tiny, tiny brain.
That being said, I do actually have something to say about what Ephraim says here. For one, we haven't even started the original video, so it's a little funky to, claim something about it preemptively with no real context or substance. You know, what we in the industry call jumping the gun.
Like what you did earlier in this video? And if you try to counter that with, oh, but that was in response to Ephraim explaining his thought process, I will not accept that because there was nothing there to substance your half a minute of, remember guys, Ephraim says he's smart, but we know he not smart. And even if I did give you that pass, you still made the albeit wishy-washy claim of Ephraim doing fishy stuff in your context segment.
This just in, commentators are no longer allowed to give their opinion on a video that they're covering. Word 11.
Nor are they allowed to decide how they structure their videos, apparently.
Shush, my little sister Chan. You're getting ahead of yourself.
Okay, I don't know what the heck you just called me, but I think it gave me mental damage. So anyways, what do you mean no context or substance? The clip you just told us to remember was the context to this complaint. Not only that, but he is talking purely about the thumbnail in relation to the video. He is not making any huge claims, really.
Now, it was brought up during scripting that this was the result of Ephraim doing a non-linear commentary, and thus this was him effectively starting to cover the video. The problem with this line of logic, however, is that after this point, the rest of the video is done through in a standard, more linear fashion. Besides, even with that bit of context, it still came off as jumping the gun due to him making the claim prior to playing any part of the original video. A timestamp or two to demonstrate which parts you're covering at any given time would be a simple fix for future reference.
What are you fixing? First of all, literally the only claim here is that Lavender doesn't go into detail about what is too much. Ephraim then shows a clip of the only example he found that was about that concept. Again, not covering anything in particular, just saying what he saw in the thumbnail didn't match the video.
Secondly, I don't get this harping on the non-linear aspect. I understand his explanation of it was odd, but I think this is one of the least offensive use cases of his non-linear style.
Secondly, what does too much mean? I don't know. Judging by the image of the thumbnail, it could mean too many colors, too many random details, the whole design shebang. Remember kids, this is why context is important.
What?
Ah, yes, in response to, what does too much mean? As in, Ephraim was probably expecting more details on if too much of one thing is worse than too much of another, or any number of meanings that this argument could be. You basically say, too much means too much. What a great dictionary you are, Poke.
To explain in a more helpful manner, Jason, this doesn't actually answer Ephraim's question. Not helping that you just say the whole design at the end. Too much depends on a million different factors. Like if a character had a lot of hair, it wouldn't count as too much to be considered bad if it's in an art style that allows for it.
Honestly, I'm not even sure what the issue with the design labeled too much even is. It's visually interesting, and it does a good job both telling me the character's current emotions and presumably giving me a decent idea as to what the character is like.
Well, my dear Ephraim, have you tried applying the principle of critical thinking to the context of the image? Because you said you would, and I'm not yet seeing it.
I hate it here.
Wow, Sebastian, you're so cool and tough. I'm literally shaking on my boots right now.
This is just a really weird chain of interjections. Ephraim accidentally proves his own point by not understanding what lavender means by too much when given the example image, which would be a valid thing to point out, but the way in which these two go about it is sloppy to say the least. Oh, and also, this is mildly subjective to the point where Ephraim's statement could kind of be rendered inconsequential.
Genuine question, was this seriously your follow-up to the first part of this video? Cause holy shit, that was a stretch.
It's Olympic season, Jason. They're just preparing for the mile run.
Jade, do you, know anything about the Olympics?
Brazilippines forever!
The first thing I'd like to suggest is giving them more verbs. Now, what does that actually mean? So, whether you're writing your character into a book or whether you're drawing them or just making an OC, a lot of the times people kind of focus on one aspect of their character. Like sometimes it's their job, like let's say that there's a knight or they work at an office or something. Sometimes people don't go much farther than that. So the key thing that you want to think about is making sure to give them more verbs, which basically just means other things that they like to do. This can be really helpful when you don't really know how you want to draw them, you just feel like you want to draw them. If you know their hobbies and stuff, it can be a lot easier to figure out their pose and the things you want to draw them with. What sort of accessories and things that they are attracted to can be sort of controlled by what they like to do. So giving them things that they like to do other than just their main thing, whatever their main job is, can really make them feel more fleshed out.
Look out! He's gonna crash! Whoa!
Ah, how unfortunate.
Jason, watch out, there's a second OC!
This is like the Hindenburg, but 2 times!
Oh, by the way, I should let you all know, Lavender Town drags out her points way more than she needs to. I put that clip through the timecode feature in Sony Vegas, and it was 1 frame short of 56 seconds for what essentially amounted to give your character hobbies. Well, on the topic of her presentation, she also talks in this fairly whispery voice, and the music occasionally gets loud enough to where it starts to drown her out. It's not a particularly big deal, but it is noticeable.
Oh, great. An interjection purely dedicated to production issues. And they're vague as all get out.
I very much prefer those over nearly 3 interjections in a row where you just say something that is totally gonna be important later.
How are they vague? Were you just straight up not listening? Do I even need to elaborate? You can just rewatch the clip where he is very clear about her over-explaining something simple and bad audio balancing.
Yay. Let's start with the point is dragged out for too long thing. Because I can definitely understand if you felt Lavender's point was either too wordy or over-explained. The problem, however, is that you don't really explain why you felt her point dragged out for too long beyond a vague notion that 56 seconds was too long for a point that boiled down to give your characters hobbies.
Him saying it can be boiled down to give your characters hobbies is the reasoning for why Lavender's point was over-explained. Now, yes, I do think Ephraim could have explained it better, especially since there are way more things wrong with Lavender's segment, but it's not like he had nothing at all.
Who's the one lacking critical thinking now, motherfucker? Cause it looks like all signs point to Poke.
Which ignores the concept of elaborating on said point to make it better advice for the audience. Hell, I'd possibly even agree if you actually give a reason for why your point felt dragged out, given our video is blatantly unscripted with how often filler words get used.
That's the thing, Poke. Lavender's marathon run senses and lack of focus is what made her elaboration basically worthless in the first place. Like, Ephraim's entire problem was with her elaboration being long and substanceless.
Saying she should have scripted, or at the very least, edit her audio a bit more, to help prevent this problem and keep things cohesive would have been a much better point to make here. But you don't make that point. which blows.
That would not even change his original points then. You can simply just extrapolate these things from his critiques on your own. I get where you're coming from. This is more pushing helpful advice rather than just raw pointing out problems in a video. But with that in mind, you're essentially just, Jason, I'm having trouble finding the words for what I want to say.
Bitching at Efron for not commentating the way she wants him to?
Yeah, I guess that works.
To address your mention of Lavender Town's tone of voice, while audio balancing is certainly an important aspect of production, you don't quite point to any examples of this happening within her video. Only that it happens occasionally, as you put it.
So, why does that matter? To prove something that was mostly a side point since it was tangentially related to production? I'm genuinely asking, what more substance or help would it provide to add examples of a mildly distracting audio error? Why the hell is this video starting to feel like a commentator's code of conduct class?
And because Ephraim isn't gonna bring this up, I will. For one, jobs and hobbies aren't the only things that dictate poses, dammit, and I will die on that hill. Personalities are a thing, and I wish art YouTubers didn't forget about them. I'm aware that Lavender does bring up personality stuff later in her video.
Next thing you want to think about is what they actually like and dislike. Now, this is an obvious thing, and a lot of people when they first get into drawing their OCs do think about this. In fact, I used to be in the habit of listing like my character's favorite and least favorite everything, like literally down to like their favorite type of tea, their favorite like ice cream flavor, you know, really granular stuff. I actually recommend not going too hard in that direction. You can really get caught up in details that would never be relevant.
However, it's more about likes and preferences rather than, say, whether they'd save a cat that got stuck in a tree or not. Also, this is another instance of her specifying what could be seen as too much of her own video after all.
So, like, the first half of this tangent is mostly fine, but then it just kinda gets confusing, not helped by your line delivery making you slur a lot of words.
Did someone say slur?
No. Ahem. As I was saying, this is mostly a problem with how you structure this. I feel like there could have been a smoother way to transition into showing that clip. Additionally, you also play the clip for what feels like a little too long. I know you did this because you wanted to point out that little bit at the end there where she says details could go too far. However, hear me out. Instead of having these two separate points bleed into each other and end up making this hard to follow, you could cut Lavender's clip after she establishes the topic of what a character likes, make your comment about that, then transition into something like, oh, the rest of this clip also shows this.
Just thought I'd let you know. Secondly, and I cannot stress this enough, sometimes characters literally exist to fill in the background of the scene and don't need elaborate backgrounds and designs.
So, back on that idea of critical thinking, fucking obviously these tips aren't for people making background or filler characters. Like, what even?
To be fair, that's also on Lavender for being woefully unclear about what tips are applicable to what. But you can still make the obvious conclusion that this is for people struggling with making interesting characters.
So for example, I drew this 21-year-old first. She seems very bland and basic, but then I thought maybe she was sort of goth or emo or like a scene kid when she was 16, and maybe when she was 12 she was like a huge science nerd and she loved dinosaurs and had braces, and maybe when she was a little baby she really used her pacifier a lot and had sort of like downy fluffy hair, you know, like some babies have. And then when I redrew the 21-year-old with all of these factors in mind, she has straight teeth because of her braces, she has a slightly more exaggerated wing on her eye because she used to be an emo kid, and she's wearing dinosaur earrings because her interest in dinosaurs when she was 12, as well as the little downy bits of hair that kind of fly off of her main hairstyle. That's just latent sort of genetics from when she was a baby and had curly hair.
Okay, the teeth and the curly hair I get, but I don't get the wing and I do not get the earrings. From what I can tell, those are parts of the character's past that they've dropped. Why would that influence their design today as an adult, several years after the fact? We all have former hobbies, things we used to be interested in but no longer are. We also all used to have styles that we've since dropped. And part of losing those interests and dropping those styles is losing the parts that make the fact that you have those hobbies or styles visually recognizable to the people around you. To put it another way, this girl is not going to still keep wearing dinosaur earrings at 21 because she had an interest in dinosaurs at 12. Most kids had interest in dinosaurs, and very few of them wear dinosaur earrings.
You know what? That's actually a very fair argument to make.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah, if someone has dropped interest in back in the day, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for them to show off aspects related to interest in the present day. Though, if I could make some smaller points, straight teeth aren't always an inherent indicator of someone having worn braces, and Laundertown's wording is just vague enough for there to be potential for the character to still have those interests. Speaking of, This is such a strangely delivered piece of advice. It would have made sense if, say, you elaborate on this character's past impacted her current interests, hobbies, and personality, but you don't really do that. So all I'm left doing is asking why you even incorporate them into the design to begin with. As an example, you could have incorporated the glasses from the 11-year-old version of the design to indicate that past interest in science instead of the dinosaur earrings. That at least would make sense and potentially hint to this character being smart in general instead of indicating a terrible taste in fashion.
Post-Point Jade returns with a vengeance. So, originally I was going to skip this whole part because I honestly didn't really know what to say about it, but then I rewatched it and I realized how strange it is. First things first, it continues the pattern of stretching to make a point. Also, you slurring your words strikes again. It would not hurt to slow down when doing your lines. I'm just saying. The attempt at doing a I kinda agree with you, here's what I have to add sort of thing is appreciated. The execution though, pretty meh. Second, this entire interjection hurts my brain due to how you set it up. Do you agree with Ephraim or not? The wording of smaller points doesn't work when the setup of this sounds like you're going to show off how Ephraim could have been right, but actually missed spectacularly. Now, getting down to the nitty-gritty of what you said here, that is literally what braces are for, to straighten your teeth. Not only that, but within context, it is an example of things that influence their appearance. Basically, saying that straight white teeth doesn't automatically equal braces does not matter in the slightest, because in this example, yes it does. Oh, and it also doesn't change what Ephraim or Lavender said at all. Lavender's wording being vague is mostly valid, although, again, I would say this could go both ways. That itself gets proven by Ephraim saying, by what I can tell. Kind of just a misunderstanding of both you guys, since it's easy to come to either of these opposite conclusions. Ephraim's argument is from a standpoint of how realistic this advice is, and depending on circumstances, you would want your characters to be believable in that way. So I think he gets more of a pass here. Like, this is still a fair argument as to why that piece of advice is not very helpful. Finally, your last point here has some good in it. The point about the glasses being a better shorthand than the dinosaurs is great. The sentences leading up to that though, not great. This is the second time now you have said something was vague or unexplained when the thing you just played contradicts that notion entirely. Every aspect of the current 21-year-old design was explained. That's about it on that. Back to whatever me and Jason were doing.
Now, this would normally be where we just move on to the next part of the video. However, this is where that clip Ephraim played around the beginning comes back into play, because if you've been particularly eagle-eyed, you'd likely notice by now that it comes from this exact segment of Lavender Town's video.
So as you can see, it makes it really easy to add things to them that make them feel really specific and like that they had a past. Obviously things like scars and injuries and major things like that can also really help build out their story, but you don't want to go too hard on that because if they're covered in scars, that's going to take over their story.
Ah, additional context that Ephraim left out of his video. Lovely.
Granted, this is far from the worst instance where Ephraim does this, especially since Lavender's advice still isn't great even with additional context. That being said, it's an absolute missed opportunity since he could have pointed out how vague Lavender Town's wording of too many scars is, since she doesn't exactly give a good metric on how much is too much here. And he could have made the Scarface joke without the random jump scare.
Or they can make a Berserk reference. The superior anime.
Bro, are you serious right now? First of all, the additional context wasn't needed because what Ephraim was doing in that clip was just showing evidence for his claim. The claim being, shall we repeat again, class?
Lavender doesn't explain what too much means.
Congratulations, guys. That's the worst anyone's ever done it. Anyway, the additional context isn't needed because there's no elaboration that adds to the point, or anything that would help anyone understand why it being too much would be a bad thing. Good lord, I am getting sick of that fucking phrase.
What makes this extra cool is that Poke just kind of proves Ephraim's point at the end here, regardless. Brilliant, truly.
Personally, I would have just made fun of the fact that example characters, one plotline of working in a big company in a bustling city, only to have an assignment in a small town, away from being a generic Hallmark movie protagonist.
You know who watches Hallmark movies? My mom.
I, for one, think I would make a wonderful and lovely Hallmark movie protagonist. Right, Jade?
I think, I don't think.
Then what was any of this for?
The internet lulls?
Well, I'm not fucking lulling and my rafflecopter remains unruffled.
Wah!
Why did you resist a police officer?
Why are you police officers?
I blew up Malaysia.
Imperfections can be even more subtle things like chipped nail polish and imperfect hairstyles. Now, if you're creating a character who, by their very nature, is extremely meticulous, or perhaps they've been to like boot camp or some other like kind of like private school, things that sort of force you to be as perfect as you can be, even in those cases, you should still probably draw imperfections on your characters just because everybody is human and there's wind and things that you can't control, but...
Out of curiosity, are you related to a guy named Jon Favreau? The biggest thing that bothers me about this video is the implication that every single character trait an OC has should be visually represented, when, truth be told, that's not even close to the case. If you're creating an original character and you plan to use them in a story, then things like the dialogue of the story and the setting the story takes place in are equally important and equally valid ways of telling the audience about the character as they're designed. Let's use SpongeBob as an example for the point I'm trying to make. After all, he is one of the, if not the most recognizable children's character of the 21st century. Now tell me, what about his design informs you that he works at the Krusty Krab as a fry cook? Hell, what about his design so much as implies that? Well, the answer is nothing. In fact, there are two things about his design which completely contradict it. Those are the fact that he's yellow, when in color theory, yellow usually means being young and childish, while fast food jobs like the one SpongeBob works at are usually staffed by teenagers, and his red tie, which actually goes too far in the other direction, as ties are typically worn at formal jobs, as opposed to, again, fast food ones.
Well, there was certainly an attempt, all right. Not a good one, but at least you tried, unlike the production nitpicks from earlier. What? You didn't fail miserably enough for me to quote that one bit from The Simpsons. Plus, saying so would be far too callous for even myself.
Sebastian is looking mighty punchable right now.
Jason!
What? It's character-on-character violence, so it's fine.
We could get fired for that.
We're already criminals, Jade.
Oh.
Does this mean I get to be the lawyer?
Who are you now?
I can give you a discount in exchange for your fingernails.
To continue onwards, your example could certainly use some work. I get what you were going for with bringing up a popular character who doesn't have an aspect of themselves that's immediately obvious, but in execution it falls somewhat flat. The second point about the outfit's alright, if maybe a bit on the curtains are just blue side of things.
What do you mean, the curtains are just blue? In what way are the curtains blue? Is it about the color theory, or is it about the association of the clothing? What happened to explaining, man?
When are we gonna trash the curtains are blue shit already? It's anti-intellectual and anti-fun.
The first point about yellow usually being associated with being childish, on the other hand, lacks a source or citation, which is kind of a problem considering how complex color theory can be.
Does personality-based color theory need sources or citations? It's kind of been reinterpreted, spread everywhere, and is highly dependent on context, intention, and subjectivity, so I guess you could just chalk this up to better research more than anything.
Speaking of research...
In fact, childishness isn't even commonly associated with yellow to begin with, being more commonly associated with cheerfulness and enthusiasm, amongst other things.
The color psychology article literally uses a photo of a child for the color yellow.
You know these people aren't gonna take that seriously. Come on, Harley, step it up.
Shut. No, but seriously, the traits you point out can be, and usually are, associated with childishness or children in general.
On that note, Ephraim, SpongeBob is a childish, optimistic, aloof character, so yellow is more fitting. And also is mostly because he is a fucking sponge, a very notoriously yellow object and sea creature.
Men can associate yellow with childishness, but that doesn't inherently make it a common or even the usual meaning.
But at the very least, it can be a meaning, and considering SpongeBob adheres to that meaning, to that, I can just say both you and Ephraim are wrong here.
It's kind of questionable for you to be even entertaining this tangent in the first place, considering you already made a point about its irrelevancy, and it's not like the point is inherently wrong, just conveyed really fucking poorly.
He also doesn't cite any sort of source or statistic for his claim that fast food jobs are normally staffed by teenagers. You had one job, and you couldn't even do that right.
Huh? Where the fuck do you live where teenagers having their primary jobs be fast food isn't the most common thing? A popular stereotype in American culture is relating teenagers to working at McDonald's. What the fuck is with you two and your incessant need to have everything hyper-detailed and accounted for, regardless of overall relevance? We're internet commentators, not fucking Ivy League professors.
Yeah, having a statistic that shows teenagers are common in fast food work wouldn't even further his point or provide anything that useful. I guess, other than having every little thing come with a citation, you're just grasping for points now.
Hell, given the usage of both yellow and red, could that not be seen as a subtle way to indicate an association with food in general? After all, McDonald's is famous for its golden arches and does use red as a primary color.
Okay, I'm just shocked at how your instant correlation was McDonald's instead of something more basic and actually edible like ketchup and mustard.
God damn it, now I have Soul Cat flashbacks.
Yes, we got our one Homestuck reference in. Hi, Shovel.
Hi, Shovel.
So it's not like those two colors being associated with fast food is an unheard of concept.
I suppose that is merely some food for thought.
The fog is coming.
What are you playing? Sperm.
As for Lavender Town, it was clear her priorities were skewed towards making characters that looked interesting, rather than the personality of the character. I think this comes to a head with the final character she designs. Sure, I know what the character likes, but I don't know what the character is
I actually think she looks like a very
like, if you catch my drift. Point is, the best advice I could give to anyone looking to get into character design is to really think about the basic idea behind them and let everything flow naturally afterwards, from backstory to just their basic likes and dislikes. Trust me, fussing over the little details really isn't worth that much.
If I can be petty for a second, that's literally the crux of Lavender Town's video. Her main points that we've seen in this video are give the character a backstory and give them likes and dislikes. Great fucking job.
Oh, is that it for her final thoughts?
Yep, pretty bare bones and kinda funny.
Kind of like the rest of her points. And her jokes. But without the funny part.
Whoa, Jade, getting a little spicy there. Don't want to encroach on my territory.
Sorry, I just wanted to get one in. Anyways, I think it's time we wrap this up and survey the damage.
We? Fuck that. I'm gonna hang out with the weed guy.
Since Jason is off smoking weed with Pal, I guess I'll take over from here. Let's run through this one real quick. Obviously, you're not the worst I've seen in terms of production, but I don't know, I just think it's kind of inconsistent. Your keyframing needs work at the least. Your intro card is just jank. Why do you have a shadow that doesn't sync up and Sebastian just doesn't? The font you use is hard to read and the old-timey effects are a photosensitivity hazard. Moving on to slightly more important things, a majority of this video, except for one point, is just stretching for things to complain about. A notable trend in the things you complain about as well come off as you just being mad Ephraim isn't commentating in the way you want him to. Like the non-linear part. Yes, it is weird, but there are way better ways to critique it that would help it improve rather than accusing him of gunplay. There are many instances of this, so maybe think harder about what should be critiqued in the you shouldn't do this way and what can be just in a you could do this better way. There's also this really frustrating thing that makes this hard to watch. The sheer amount of stalling and dragging and the 5-year-long intro. Listen, you can keep whatever lore or interest skit or whatever. I think that is perfectly okay. But the recap sequence doesn't explain anything coherent due to the way it's cut, and what it does explain can just be interpreted through context clues. Oh, and when you actually start the commentary, it takes you several minutes to do anything of substance, while the entire time is just spent being like, remember this one thing, guys. Although you did end up being a little bit hypocritical, which is just funny. As for your mention of being a character designer, and then the mention of Ephraim not linking the video, you don't actually do anything that required you to talk about how you're an artist. You didn't give any of your experiences or insight. It was all pretty basic argumentation. Your point about Ephraim not linking the video could have been saved for final thoughts. Actually, a lot of the things that ended up stalling the intro for this commentary could have been saved for your final thoughts, or just put somewhere else to make for a better viewing experience. I mean, it would also help if your final thoughts weren't so dry in the first place. Enough poking at Poke, I want to talk about the rest of the chain real quick because man, is it infuriating. Ephraim, I don't think is the worst here. His issues amount to bad wording and jank structure. His style of non-linear commentary sometimes just amounts to having final thoughts inserted into the start of a video instead of the end. It just needs to be tweaked more and made more clear what is meant to be linear and what isn't. He also just doesn't have good focus in this commentary, examples being the SpongeBob incident and the way he talked about how Lavender was over-explaining. It's the reason why Poke thought it was purely a production point, because including how long the segment went on for was completely arbitrary. You guys want to know the true reason why both Ephraim and Poke struggled? Because Lavender's original video is just that bad. She likes to go on run-on sentences, which is why it's hard to formulate coherent arguments against her. She also makes everything barely connect together and unclear, which makes it hard to defend if you aren't really sure what you're defending. That's basically what I got from these two in the chain. To end this off with something that is kind of fitting considering the topic of this commentary, the co-op between you and this Sebastian character is pretty disappointing. I'm going to assume you wrote all of his lines. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I think most of this still applies either way. There isn't a lot of interaction or bits, and what he ends up providing in this commentary is either really weak potshots or even weaker arguments. This last complaint might be a bit subjective, so take it with a grain of salt if you please, but he also kind of lacks any kind of unique commentary style. The only thing he has is the mildly fancier wording, otherwise it's just pretty bland and doesn't provide a good contrast when paired with you. Like, you guys could have played up the fancy butler thing, make it more self-indulgent since you like this character so much, have him be wordy or condescending, long drawn out potshots maybe. If you're worried about him being out of character since he is already an existing character, don't worry. This is your commentary universe. People can do whatever they want with whatever character they choose to include. To sum this all up, Sebastian is kind of boring and you don't do as much as you could with him. Have fun with it. And that's a wrap. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have like 3 other guys I have to deal with now.